Thank you for the invitation. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a personal story. There is a reason behind it. Trust me, I'll only take a minute. Um, my father was born in a very small village in Pakistan. And he was born as one of 9 siblings. And he was the first to go to university in our family. And he decided to pursue librarianship. And he ultimately went to a major city, did his degree in librarianship, went to Indiana University in the US, did his master's in librarianship, came back, and ultimately became the National Librarian of Pakistan when he retired. So the highest position you can get. And I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. And when the other 4 disappointed my father and didn't pursue in his footsteps, he put all of his hopes in me. It's like he is the one who I can convert into librarianship. And he took me to the National Library when I was 13. And he said, look at these amazing stacks of research collections and the Dewey Decimal Classification Scheme. And I remember this quite explicitly saying to him, oh, what a boring job. I would never want to work in a library. And what caught my attention was a computing project that was running at that time, which was converting the catalog from English language to Urdu. And the very first thing I realized was, oh, you have to work so hard to convert something from what we consider a national or a global language to something that people can use in local communities. And that was the first inclination I had about, oh, actually, not everything is designed to work for the communities where they are used. Um, Ultimately, I chose computer science because I became passionate about that topic. I did all of my degrees in computer science. And when I was studying in the UK, came UK do my PhD, I needed some part-time work and I just wanted to do a job which will take no brain power. So I started working as a bookshelver in a library, and the rest is history. Here I am as a university librarian at Leeds. Um, but the reason why I was telling this story is because it really ignited that passion for higher education in me, because it changed my father's life. And if his life wasn't changed, my life would have been very different. And that purpose is really, really critical. But what it also ignited me is that purpose can be global. That purpose can be universal. And unfortunately, that is not the case at the moment. It is not the case in many, many parts of the world. It is not the case in many communities within the UK, let alone many parts of the world. So we really need to think differently. And I really was absolutely inspired by that joy of generosity. It feels quite alien to talk about that in higher education. Just the fact that we can talk about joy. And I think we really need to start thinking about that as a way to change the system. I don't know about you, but places I've worked in, and I've worked in many places now, um, I don't think anyone has ever come back and said they absolutely love the higher education governance and system. But it is also our own place to change that. We are the change instigators. So I think we really need to start thinking about how do we, as amazing parts of the system, can actually influence and change the system. So that's where I wanted to start with. But as I promised, I will talk mostly about Ken now. And the thing I really wanted to talk about Ken is what it is. And firstly, a real inspiration from Simone. So thank you, Simone, for instigating that at Leeds. It was an idea that came from actually universities are best placed to change this. We are the most interdisciplinary units in kind of environments that we work in. We do research, we do teaching, we do civic engagement, we look at our communities, we try to solve real world problems. But we can do so much more if we try to do it all together. And it's that power of collaboration, the global collaboration. So that's how Ken came in. And the fact that it was about knowledge really inspired me. I'm a knowledge professional by design. All of us are knowledge professionals by design. Anyone who works in higher education is a knowledge professional. But knowledge really sits to the core of my heart. And I have a slide where I will talk about the real threats to knowledge at this time, not just about equity, but generally real threats to knowledge and what we should be doing about that as well. But it is about enabling fair access. It is about really shifting that narrative from that positionality that I have power and therefore I have knowledge. We've all heard that phrase, knowledge is power. It really is true. But that power can be distributed and yet doesn't change the fact that everyone can have power and everyone can have influence. So that's where the instrumentalization of the network came in. It's all about global challenges, as Simone highlighted. And also, why are we here in the first place, right? I don't work because I want to establish an amazing library, or I often say open is an end to mean. We talk so much about open access, open science, open education, but why? Because ultimately that can change people's lives. It is about society, it is about societal impact, it is about changing that element. So we shouldn't forget the end and not just focus on the means. So with those strategic imperatives, I really want to talk a little bit about the network. So network started as a joint collaboration between University of Leeds and Pretoria, really focusing on that global north, global south elements together, but it has grown massively. And that is without putting too much strategic effort behind it. It's a very, very small executive that supports the network. One of those lovely gentlemen is here, Tom. Uh, but without any major publicity, without any major push, we've now got over 45 higher education organizations, multiple other organizations, over 380 people have signed up individually because they all believe in the principles. And I think that is, I'm just so delighted that Salford is officially coming on board because we can do so many things together within the UK context and beyond. It's also a fantastic ready-made network. So when you're thinking about research projects or educational projects or civic engagement projects, you can really use the power of the network. And you don't have to use all of the network. And I'll give some examples around that as well. I did mention knowledge at risk. And I don't know how many people are reading news, but it's very depressing these days. Um, let me just say this. The, the public or the society already had increasing lack of trust in the kind of knowledge and research that we do. There's so much effort that we put in communication, effective communication of research, the impact that they produce. But at a widespread level now, knowledge is absolutely a threat. We've been seeing evidence of what's happening in US, but it's not just the US. There are many, many areas across the globe where knowledge is being customized to fit particular needs of that time or of that particular mindset. And that is not the right thing to do. Knowledge has to remain authentic. Knowledge has to remain absolutely trustworthy. And that's where I say the role of knowledge professionals, information professionals, and frankly, librarians and archivists is more important than ever in this today's day and time. So that is a fundamental thing that really worries me at this time. It's about integrity of knowledge. It's about authenticity of knowledge. It's about trustworthiness of knowledge. It's also about the effectiveness of knowledge. And that effectiveness of knowledge comes by looking at that equitable access, but also equitable co-production of knowledge in the first place. If we are not doing that knowledge co-produce, we might develop a solution that detects earthquakes and solves them here, but will not solve them in Nigeria. Will not look at local context and local needs in the best possible fashion. So I think there are lots and lots of principles around that that we can focus on. Uh, that really highlights the fundamental need of knowledge equity network more than ever before. And I think even before it was really important, I think the importance of it is now grown even to a level that was never perceived before. So Canon University of Leeds. So as I said, we are one of the founding partners. Again, thanks, many huge thanks to Simone's inspiration and leadership on that note as well. And we've grown over time. But what we've also been doing is shifting the narrative around what can do. So it was an organic network that was growing, and it was a network of like-minded, values-based institutions, organizations, and individuals. And that's fantastic. It gives us a really solid base. We've been doing an amazing amount of events. We've been talking about all the way from knowledge production and the issues around that to the biases in knowledge to how do we co-produce knowledge in different parts of the world. And we've been doing an amazing amount of content production, partnerships, events around that. But we also wanted to shift the narrative to start moving towards actually, can we shape the policy? Can we shape a better global perspective on what some of the barriers are? Can we think differently about some of these things? So moving it purely from an events-focused, advocacy-focused approach to actually more evidence-focused, research-focused activities as well. And one of the things that we're doing, which I'm delighted Salford is working with us on, Emma and Dominic somewhere here is also are really contributing to that, is we are doing a project around what would be the barriers or attitude issues across global open publishing for monographs and long forms. We know it's becoming a big topic here in the UK. We know it affects all disciplines, but actually just some of the initial discussions I've had really opened my own perceptions and minds. It changed what I think would be the barriers here versus what we've learned from Philippines. And actually that really fundamentally has shifted the narrative around the problems have to be well understood in the first place before they can be solved globally. And I think that was a really, really strong move on developing that project-focused approach. Just various times, I'm going to move forward. One other thing we are doing is that we are now bringing knowledge equity network leadership within the library context. So it over time has grown as a very strongly led project, and we've had Simone's leadership for that. We've now got Nick Plant, who's our DVC for Research and Innovation leadership for that, and Nick will remain that executive lead. But we really want to embrace that in the library as something that is so fundamental to us that we really want to champion this. And I see that over other parts of the world, that is also going to be an increasing amount of effort in that area. And then the last thing I would say is that knowledge equity has given us a platform to talk about bigger challenges and bigger issues. So on 27th of June, we are hosting a major symposium in Leeds around the future of knowledge. And in that, we're talking Christopher Smith, the Chief Executive of AHRC, Steen Westlake, the Chief Executive of ESRC, and many other colleagues are coming over, including many librarians, national librarian, international librarians, to really talk about how do we work together to protect, safeguard, but also ensure that knowledge remains an effective pillar for our humanity and our democracy. And those are the kind of topics that are really fundamental to supporting the future of knowledge equity, and ensuring that the global landscape does not fall into a place where we cannot recover from that. So I think it's an amazing platform through which we can do more things. That's all I wanted to really say. I know that there could be so many things I can talk about, lots and lots of practical things. One other thing I would mention is that a lot of university presses are coming on board because they're also looking at the effectiveness of this. And if you want to see more about the Knowledge Equity Network, if you want to sign the declaration, well, as an organization, it's already been signed, but as an individual, you're very welcome to. You can just scan the QR code, but also just see what the partners are doing. And if you want to participate in anything, any kind of project you have in mind, do get in touch and we will discuss that and push that forward. So thank you very much for listening and appreciate that.
Questions? Thanks, Masood, for this really inspiring presentation. You've kept beautifully to time, so there's 7 minutes for some questions. So if any of you want to ask Masood something, please feel free to do that now. Jeroen, please.
This is a fantastic presentation. Thank you. Is it difficult to keep all these, because it feels like a grassroots movement, which is very good, I think. Let everyone do what they're doing already, but contribute to a larger good, so to say. Is it difficult to keep them together, to have them interact? What kind of effort does that ask from you?
I think it's firstly, grassroots movements are really strong because they're driven by purpose rather than structure or push. And I think that's fantastic. But one of the fundamental things here is that we do want to use the full system to support this. So we do need to get the right structures in place. We do need to get the right organizational backing in place. But we also need to encourage people to work towards this. And I think Simone was saying about the joy and resilience. For those who are interested in the whole biopsychosocial models of resilience, one of the real things behind generating personal resilience is by supporting others in that context and really giving others. And I think that actually really builds that sense of purpose, that sense of collaboration, that sense of excitement in a lot of people. So actually that part is easy. The rest, the coordination part is more difficult, and actually keeping this to a control, not always, but this is really important now. Let's focus on this while other things will follow. I think that's usually the more difficult part to do.
Other questions? Emma, please. Wait for the microphone.
Thanks, Masood, for your inspiring leadership in this space, and we're really excited to be getting on board as the library here at Salford. Can you say a little bit, you spoke about obviously the priority around working with the Global South to kind of co-produce and understand. Could you say a little bit about how at Leeds so far you've balanced that kind of global priority with local impact, you know, in terms of those local communities and kind of areas that are less privileged with less access to knowledge kind of locally within the UK, within West Yorkshire?
Yeah, I'll be very honest, not as effectively as we should have locally. And I think that's part of Leeds' background, that also parts of actually we haven't had a proper civic engagement strategy for that reason, but it's definitely on the cards. So the things that we are doing purely from a knowledge delivery perspective. So let's pick AI as an example. Huge biases, huge complications, huge concerns around what it might do. So one of the things we are talking about at the moment is how do we generate AI literacies, not just for our own staff and students, but also for our local communities. One other thing that we are talking about is how do we support our local communities in media literacies. So when they see some news online, they recognize, is it actually authentic? The increasing amount of social media changes that we are seeing. Meta's news, I think earlier in March, came out about they're no longer going to use fact checkers, but actually do community notes. Do people recognize what they actually mean? When our people see something, do they immediately think that is true or not? So we are developing a program of activities around increasing media literacies, information literacies, and AI literacies, both for our own staff and students, but also for our local communities. But the wider perspective is definitely global, because this is not just our issue. This will also be happening across the globe in many, many communities. So the more we can do this with the platforms we have now, the better it would be.
Any other questions? It's time for one more, please.
Thanks very much. Andy Mear, University of Salford. Is that on? Yep, great. See, picking up on that, the government in the UK launched an inquiry into media literacy just recently and is currently receiving submissions of evidence. And I wonder what you think of as the scale of that challenge. You mentioned AI. It's a conversation we're having here at the university as well about access to AI and making sure that's available both to all within the institution but outside of it. But of course, we have students arrive at us with expectations, with behaviours, with habits. And one of the questions we have is how do we make sure that that secondary school, early years learning is also addressing these sorts of fundamental questions? And what is our contribution to that? And I wondered what thoughts you might have about that.
Yeah, it's a big question. Nicely put. I can give you my thoughts, but I can't give you answers. And I think this is where that partnership with local councils and your Manchester wider, I don't know what's Manchester equivalent to VICA here, but it would be the wider authorities that we work with would become very important. One of the things that we have initiated in Leeds as a library thing is we've now created a new network called Libraries in Leeds Network. And the idea behind that is that all school libraries, including primary and secondary school where they exist, which is also a big thing that I would like to talk about at some point, all school libraries, all cultural institute libraries, all academic libraries, prison libraries, all other aspects that we can think of have come together to say, what are the most pressing challenges for our region? And that then basically moves from, actually, we don't have funding for stationery in some places, to we really need to use our network effectively to start supporting our upcoming students, their parents often in communities, in understanding what the scale of this problem is. It's not an answer, but there is effort being done on that local community side. Institutions have a very big role to play in this. I think generally speaking, even with the current kind of financial environment, we are usually very well resourced in comparison to secondary school networks in other places. And we ought to play our role in supporting that setup as well.